On this week's edition of the Marvel of Horror, me and my guests will be discussing Ari Aster's 2019 folk horror classic Midsommar, a story about a young girl who recently lost her family and her friends venturing over to Sweden to partake in some summertime rituals, celebrating the pagan festival Midsummer, and they get a little bit more than they bargained for. Make sure you like and subscribe. We want to hear from you, so leave your feedback and comments below. All right, here we go. So I gotta ask, what was your first experience, or like what was it that made you both like, if not fans, or appreciate like the horror genre? Was it a movie? Was it an experience? A book?
We were talking about this the other day. For me, kind of like the first horror experience I remember is the original Pet Cemetery.
Nice,
Um,
very nice.
I could not. I would have to hop on my bed throughout my childhood because I think the character's name was Gage, the little
Yeah.
kid. I thought he was under my bed with a little scalpel, and I don't know. I just think as someone who's an actor and a writer now, just like how powerful my imagination was back then. That I truly, truly believed this undead child was under my bed to slice my Achilles tendon and eat my throat.
Oh.
It terrified me for years. For
Oh,
years,
yeah.
for
Well,
years, it terrified me.
I gotta say, a horrifying movie, and I saw it too, way too young.
Me
Yeah,
too.
a horrifying
Me
movie.
too.
And you're probably one of the only few people I've talked to, and it's like, yeah, Pet Cemetery, yeah, Gate scared me. Because everyone's like, oh my god, I thought Zelda was just gonna come after me.
Right.
The woman in the bed. I think it's like a man actor who plays that character, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what terrified me.
Oh, is
that
that
movie.
the older woman in
Yes.
the bed? Oh yeah. Oh god. Well, she was terrifying.
Yeah.
too.
Oh.
Also, the I can't remember his name. It's like Paxcaf or something. The guy.
Yeah.
who's,
Scan or the jogger.
Yeah, exactly,
That got killed,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. For me, that was
A defining horror
that
moment.
was a defining horror moment. But what about you?
I have so definitely films. I'm trying to think of like if there was an initial experience, but yeah, I remember there's 3 films. I remember watching The Grudge with my cousin. That was like we were obsessed with that movie. I've seen it probably 20 plus times. And then The Ring. I was coming up when The Ring came out.
Of course.
That one was nightmare level.
I was seeing that girl in the closet for like
Samara.
yeah, I was seeing her for like weeks.
Nightmares. I would just have these nightmares of her like crawling out of the well and coming in, and I'd wake up like my heart.
And when was that? Was that
pounding.
like the early aughts when that was
Yeah.
coming out? Because that's when
Yeah.
a bunch of those films were experimenting with that quality of movement.
Oh,
that
yeah.
she
Yeah.
had that was like terrifying.
Terrifying.
And
Yeah.
then guess what? They film it
Broken bones.
backwards, right? Or they film it something. Is that what they
And
do?
then play it backwards, so it
play it
has that
backwards.
So it
weird
looks-
quality, kind of like they did that with Twin Peaks too. I remember when they were in the red room.
I
Yeah,
think it was also what was like so interesting about The Ring is it was terrifying to think that you could become haunted or cursed by just watching something without
Yeah.
even knowing. Because we're in this age where we're starting to consume all this content. Streaming services are eventually going to come out.
beware.
And so yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to my third like horror staple that I think developed me into a horror nerd was Stay Alive. Frankie Muniz, Sophia Bush,
I don't think
Jimmy
I've ever seen
Simpson.
I've never seen that.
What's
either.
Stay Alive?
2006. It's video games, and the video game starts to like happen in real life. So if they die in the video
Oh.
game, it will happen to them in real life. And so then they have to
Oh.
hunt down like whoever's haunting this video game and like stab her in the heart with a stake or something, like burn it down. And yeah, and so that was 2006. I think that was my first scary movie in a theater.
Okay.
And I remember I was hooked after that. I was like, yeah, give me all these.
See, I love it. I love that terminology, hooked. Because yeah, I've been hooked for a long time. So, Midsommar,
Yeah.
right? 2019 folk horror classic, as I'd like to call it. Ari Aster, written, directed. What was your first initial reaction seeing Midsommar? When like the first time you ever saw it, what'd you really think? I can like me, I think Midsummer was a movie that I liked it when I first saw it, but multiple viewings made me enjoy it like that much
Even
more
more.
because there's more things I caught, and I think I was coming fresh off of seeing like Hereditary, and Hereditary was just like pure nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw Midsummer, I was like, oh, okay, this. I'm not as scared as I was, and I was really
Right.
anticipating it. But what'd you think when you first initially saw it?
I agree, you know, especially when you've seen Hereditary first, which is as soon as her head hits that pole. And even before that, you know, it's just like, you know what you're in for, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just like horror and possession till the end. And with Midsummer, I remember there was like a slower horror build, but the end just shocked me. Like,
Yeah.
I just remember being so struck by the visual elements of, you know, just that whole end with the bear suit and all the people that are died and turned into these things. Like, I just was shocked by how the visuals were really informing the horror aspect of it for me. But yeah, I agree. I was kind of like watching the film, like, okay, I'm not so scared yet.
Yeah, it was more of a slow burn, I think, than Hereditary. And I'm just trying to think of like, because we were saying a minute ago, like how Ari Aster, the themes of family and grief are kind of present throughout. So I'm trying to think like what is different. And there's something about like Hereditary is like contained, right, in this house, in this family, whereas Midsummer is like really expansive.
Yeah.
Right? They're literally traveling.
And there's all these characters that are coming in.
All these characters. And so I feel like I felt similarly to the two of you, and I think maybe it had something to do with that. Whereas like Hereditary at first, it's immediately scarier. It's a little easier to metabolize because it's like a smaller scope of a story until the end.
Right.
So maybe that has something to do with my initial reaction to Midsummer too. Is just like it was so large that I'm trying to grasp at things, but it did have that slow burn, and there is something like Midsummer is a little scarier to me upon multiple viewings because it feels a little more real, like it could actually happen.
Yeah, I
in
think
real life.
I think that's a really so. I think horror movies. What I would like to see horror movies touch on is when you go to a different country. There's different rules and different cultures and just different things going on that, you know, I think I like how that movie kind of plays on that. It's kind of like, okay, well, we're going to, I mean, you can see the one guy who's got, what's it, Will Poulter, who has a very punchable face to me.
Especially in
a
that
nice
movie.
guy in real life. He's like, okay, I'm going to Sweden. It's going to be like,
hot things.
He's acting like he's going to like Cancun and spring break when he's really going to Sweden, and it's like, nah, it's not like that at all. And it's like you're actually encroaching on someone's culture that they take very seriously.
Yeah,
right.
And like that's a thing. Like traveling to different parts of the world, it's like you could. That's a scary situation.
This is real. Yeah, those real life horror situations really interest me. I'm thinking of like Brittany Griner in Russia and the hashish oil capsule and stuff that we take for granted here. But yeah, you're in another country and all of a sudden you're in a real life horror movie.
Yeah,
but
it's
no one, your life.
Like, and no one's going to protect you. What was it? Was it like the early '90s? I forget his name, but what do you go to Singapore? And spray paint or something, and they beat him.
Yeah, caned him.
They caned him.
Yes,
that was like,
oh my
that was
gosh.
as part of his release. Like, oh, we're just gonna beat you with cane. You want to spray paint here?
Just,
it's like, what? But I'm American. Yeah, we don't care.
Not being aware of things, and well, we were saying too on the drive over here, just the idea of how shocking it is in Midsommar them jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
But then kind of like if putting the magnifying glass on our culture, and what are some things if aliens came down and looked down at things we do. That would be horrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we do, whether it was, I don't know, like circumcision or our relationship in this country to guns or whatever, right? I feel like someone looking from the outside in could be like, that's a real life horror movie.
Well, I think that happens like every day across like the country. Like we kind of like, if we were to go to Saudi Arabia, we'd be like, what?
Yeah.
No way.
Right.
No, you don't live like this. And they'd be looking at you like, what's your problem?
Yeah. Like this is our life. Well, it's so funny. I'm like thinking this now, but especially because Midsummer is, about the cult aspect, and we've looked into cults so much because we're obsessed. But the
Yeah.
idea that they, kind of like systematically desensitize you to the violence in Midsummer's case or the manipulation in other cults' cases. And the movie does that to you,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
in that first scene, you do kind of, it's shocking, but you do get this look into her family and how they all died and how her sister committed suicide. And it's brutal when they show you with her
Yes.
having that, tube
Oh,
taped to her
yeah.
face.
Very haunting image.
Yeah.
Like, right from the get-go in that movie.
And then they just kind of like, it's tamer for like 30 minutes or even more until the elders jump off the cliff.
Yeah.
And then they have it right in your face. They're
boom,
like
boom, boom.
banging a hammer on. It's so gory and it's so brutal, but they've just been kind of like putting these little violent pieces in throughout the end. You don't even realize what you're consuming and how desensitized you're becoming to it.
Yeah, and he does a really good job. So, like I said, I watched some of it last night, and I've seen it a couple of times. He does a really good job of like kind of putting in these little side stories just to swerve you. So
Yeah.
when this stuff really like you're kind of focused on their relationship. You're kind
Her
of
and her
focused on
boyfriend.
that, her and her
Yeah.
boyfriend, and then he takes you on a little side story about the boyfriend and the one friend and their thesis. How he's basically just going to copy all of them,
Yes.
Yes.
and it's just there to swerve you and then get you when you're not thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Right,
And
right.
he's very smart with that. It's very cool.
It's really expert. But yeah, I'm realizing we love to talk about form reflecting content.
Mhm.
So when you're making a film, how are you structuring the audience's viewing experience as a direct reflection of the literal content that you're making it about, which is this cult? And he does do that.
Yeah.
He like eases you in until you get to the end and you're kind of like, well, there wasn't really anything else to do. This
Yeah.
had to be done this way.
And that makes us feel like Florence Pugh.
Yeah.
It makes us feel like Florence Pugh's character, right? Like getting like slowly sucked in,
Yeah.
and then desensitized to things.
Yeah, and it's also like now that I'm like kind of thinking back on it too. I don't know how much it plays into the story, but like to me, like when I think about the end and how it ends, it's almost like okay, here's that final stage. Like okay, here's that final stage of grief too.
Yeah.
Acceptance. She's just accepting this.
Yeah.
Now, I think you know what I mean. Like that kind of plays into like her whole story about losing her family and not probably trying to deal with it this whole trip.
Right.
And like that whole like accept. Okay, well I just accept it now. Now
Yeah.
I'm a queen and.
Well, we were talking about on our drive that, and I realized the time we most recently watched it didn't quite land for me the first time I watched it. But the whole film, she's experiencing these traumatizing things with her family dynamic. Obviously, her entire family is now dead and she's going to Sweden. And her boyfriend, who's like going to break up with her in the beginning, is just not present for her, not emotionally available, not really like holding her. It's all kind of pretense. And so the whole film, she's not getting the support she really needs from what is supposed to be her family. And then at the very end, she becomes May Queen, and then she goes and she sees her boyfriend supplying his seed. And she has a panic attack. And all the women with her, like, go through that panic attack with her. And you see what it gives her. Like, you see her get something out of it that she hasn't gotten this whole time in this relationship. And so somehow in the end you're like, wait, it's actually kind of beautiful that she's found this community and this kind of support that she hasn't been able to find, even though it's a really brutal way.
Well, and that goes back to our interest of cults in general, just this idea that people want to belong, people need to know they matter, and if society or your family isn't providing you with this very necessary feeling, like it's very human to like need to go seek that in other places.
Exactly, and that's why talking, going back to our conversation earlier. That's why I think cults are so terrifying.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to be, you got to be stupid to get sucked into a cult. No, you don't. Smart people with the best intentions
Absolutely.
always get sucked into cults, and cults are very terrifying. You
Yeah.
can be easily led astray,
And
no
often I
matter
feel
how
like
smart you are.
folks who get sucked into cults, or a way I really empathize with them, are people who are often really smart, questioning things at a vulnerable, sensitive time in their life, maybe at a time of transition. And I feel like I've been in that point in my life many times. And so I'm like, yeah, I would get sucked in. I would get sucked into
Yeah,
multiple
I think
cults.
depending on where I was in my life and what they were selling,
Yeah.
I'm not too. I'm not too. I mean, right now I kind of like right now. Not to get too off the beaten path, but I mean, I I see I see the two political parties might as well be cults now.
Yeah.
They operate the same to me.
Right.
It's like
Well,
what I
it's
mean?
that question of like what is a cult? Where's the line?
Yeah.
When does a religion become a cult? When does a political party become a cult? Because there are definitely elements within the political parties that are, I feel like, straight up cults.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
where is that line? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
I don't
Yeah.
know either, and I still honestly I think we're still seeing that kind of play out.
Yeah.
Do you think there's an element there is an element of an unquestioned leader or unquestioned leaders?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very. I mean, there are these characteristics, cutting off from family or reality,
Hmm.
an unquestioned leader or head of the group.
yeah. It's like you said. When does the line? Where's the line from just tribalism to being cult?
Yeah,
Where is it? You know what I mean? It's starting to get kind of blurred in my eyes as
yeah.
far as like political parties and stuff and ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean cults they are, and I don't know if it's just me, but there seems to be a very new fascination with cults. Like
Yes.
cults are the new serial killers.
They
That's
are kind of
interesting.
popping up left and
They're
right.
popping up left and right. Like Netflix is making a killing off of like
Cult
doing
documentaries.
Cult
Yeah.
documentaries.
We've seen
Oh.
them all.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should have stock in them because we watch them on repeat.
Yes.
I read this book, and this is off of Max Cutler's acclaimed podcast about cults.
Yeah.
So I read this book, and there was obviously I kind of knew a lot about Waco and the Manson family and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But yeah, I didn't hear some of these cults that are in this book. I'm like, oh my god, this is really happening. One of them was like the narco Satanists. I don't know if you've ever.
Oh,
heard
I don't
of
know
them.
the
No, I
narco
don't know
Satanists.
those.
Look into the I don't know all the specifics, like dates and times and stuff like that. But the narco Satanist, yeah, that was a drug leader cult, but the guy really thought he was like a voodoo witch. And
Wow.
went through his process of getting his I forget what it's called. There's a term for it, but he basically got his witch's cauldron, which is supposed to be magic. And it's a big ceremony when you get to the rank of having your own cauldron.
Cauldron.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was killing people and cooking them up
Oh.
and burying people. There's a lot of like having, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm pretty sure it was like in Mexico and South America. But yeah, this guy had a huge death count and a lot of followers. I forget his name, but yeah, the narco Satanists.
Narco Satanists.
But I'm reading some of these and I'm like, you know what?
Well, for me, I grew up a kid in the '90s. Heaven's Gate was the cult.
Yeah,
That kind
I
of
do remember
influenced my
Heaven's
childhood
Gate.
with the Nikes and the all black and the shaved heads. That's what I don't know where I came into my
That was
cultish consciousness.
A very successful cult from a standpoint of like member buy-in. Like
Heaven's Gate.
yeah, because they did the thing that they were trying to do, which was all
Yeah.
go
Go on the Hill Bop Comet.
on yeah.
Supposedly, yeah.
And so that entire group, save for a few who filtered off through the
Yeah.
years, bought in enough to go through with that mass suicide. Like that is some powerful rhetoric.
That's very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo and the Narco Satanists, Miami native. Check
Okay.
into that.
Yeah,
Very
I'm gonna look
careful.
that up.
Okay.
That'll be Netflix's
Next
series
documentary.
when they're done promoting Waco.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Waco, crazy too. But Waco is interesting for another reason too, because obviously the cult itself, the Branch Davidians, are pretty wild. But the ATF's responsibility
Oh,
in it as
yeah.
well is such a big part of
Oh yeah.
like how the civilized folks reacted in that moment
Mm-hmm.
was maybe a little out of character or overboard and kind of added to everything. I feel like that makes that unique.
Makes that unique, and you can also see it's like, okay, well, I mean, me opinions vary, but I'm totally under the opinion that yeah, that was a total show of power that like blew up in their face.
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
not expect that
They did
to
not
happen. No,
expect
no, no, no,
that.
no.
It's
They
like
thought they were
it's
going to go in and take those guns and get out. Yeah,
hmm yeah,
yeah.
and it's like that's just that one compound.
Right.
What's gonna happen? Do they really think they're gonna start doing that like city to city?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's, gosh, we could talk about the
Oh,
amount of
yeah.
cult content we've consumed. But I think another thing that's really scary, we were talking before about, cults are so scary because, the average person, the us, can get sucked into that, can have that buy-in. But like Wild Wild Country, what is that group called?
They were on Rajneeshpuram. I think was
Rajneeshpuram,
the
yeah.
society that
Yeah.
they were in Oregon.
And when you're first watching that documentary and learning about them, they kind of create this really beautiful society where they're trading work to build this community. There's architects, there's doctors, like everyone's using their skills to create this ideal community. And then naturally, like absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah,
The head of
absolutely.
it, takes advantage, and then there's just so many questionable elements there. But at first,
yes,
you're buying in. You're like, yeah, this seems like a utopia. This seems
yes.
successful.
Well, that's the thing about the cults. Again, that's so fascinating. It's like when does the utopia turn into a dystopia? And I can only imagine when you're in it, that line is even more blurred, and you're like, wait a minute, this started out that we were actually
Yeah.
living in this egalitarian
Mhm.
socialist society, yeah, where everybody's contributing and everybody's getting something out of it. And now, at least in Rajneesh Puram's case, we're drugging houseless folks and bringing
Yes.
them in. We're
In
poisoning
order to
salad bars.
Yeah.
steal the vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd be
Steal the
like,
vote. Yeah,
when
that's
did that
right. I did read
happen?
about
When did that happen?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like when you start, the road to ruin is paved with the best intentions all the time.
Yeah.
But when you start realizing you have power now, and you become conscious of that, it's like, oh well, yeah, okay. Then you start actually, whoever the person is starts thinking they're bigger than the idea,
Yes.
Yeah,
and then that's it. It's all it takes.
yeah.
I mean, some of these cults I'm reading, I'm like, oh man, that sounds really nice. Like even I wouldn't go as far. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a cult. It has some aspects of a cult, but the Anarchists was a documentary I watched last year about like the
yes.
first starters of like Bitcoin and why they wanted to do
Oh,
Bitcoin.
yes,
That's
yes,
a really
yes.
check that out too. The whole point of why they wanted to do Bitcoin is because they felt like they were, slaves to the American currency system, which in a way you kind of are. So
Right.
it's like, all right, well, we'll start our own little society
Yeah.
with our own currency and be free of it, because we're not all about that. We just want to have a good life and raise kids, and like I said, the best intentions. Then more people get in, and then more people
Mhm.
start. The people, oh, we can make money.
They learn how to hack the
They
system.
learn how to hack the system, and like I said, yeah, money and power, and okay, well, this isn't the idea of like being free. We're anarchists. We want to be free of the system.
Yeah.
You're just creating another
A whole
system.
other
But
one.
this is making me realize too that cults fill in gaps in society, right? Cults often folks who feel like they are thrown away or they are
Yeah.
invisible to society. So, slightly unpopular opinion, but like in a sense, we all kind of bear responsibility for folks getting sucked into these cults, because
Absolutely.
if we did live in this utopian society where everyone was cared for, everybody felt important, everybody got what they needed, there wouldn't be the need for groups like this.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a need to break away from the system, but
And it
there
wouldn't be
are
so
things
common.
wrong in the society we live in. There are
Exactly.
people who fall through the cracks.
If you really felt like, hey, I'm getting something back for what I'm
Yeah.
putting in, and I can rest easy knowing that, But like you said, you don't feel like that. You feel like you're putting, especially society today where everything's so much harder to do financially.
Yeah.
You're putting so much in and feeling like you get so little back.
Yeah.
And then there's someone who looks you in the eye and says, "You're special."
Yeah,
And you have something to contribute.
And you have something to contribute. That's really
Yeah.
hard to turn down, especially when you feel like society in general is telling you the opposite. You're worthless. You don't matter. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
intoxicating.
I mean, to me, the most recent cult perfect example of that is was it Keith Raniere?
Oh,
Yeah.
NXIVM.
Nexium?
Yeah. Now you're talking, because now we might be, whether you realize it or not, we're talking about our next film.
Well, I wanted to bring that up. I wasn't too sure.
I wasn't sure
But
if
we
that
have
was
to
a
unpack-
setup. I wasn't sure if that was a good setup
Yeah.
for that.
We have to
spike.
unpack NXIVM because
Well, sure,
Yeah, oh
sure.
yeah. You talk about the most okay, so you talk about, especially with the considering what that cult's about, we're still in like the time of like Me Too and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here we are, a sex cult run by this guy who same thing. And when I listen to his rhetoric, he's like, okay, I know how to use terminology to make people feel important and special.
Yes.
And he knows how to that guy knows how to sell it. I mean, you talk about charisma.
Super charismatic, very smart, and
Very
very emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
highly
Highly
emotionally intelligent.
I mean, if he was, can you imagine that guy was really working for the CIA?
All right, put those powers elsewhere. But he's a narcissist, so
exactly,
he can't help but, form this attention circle around himself. And oh, it's so fascinating. So NXIVM pulls in a lot of actors, which Matt's an actor, and I did go to acting school, so we really relate to that. And so when you start to hear, the things that he's saying at first, and the kind of workshops that they're setting up for self-development and self-actualization, you're like, yes, this is they're having these really intense conversations and talking about things that have affected them in their lives and getting to the root of trauma. But then it starts to turn, especially when Keith Raniere starts putting a hierarchy within genders. He just goes off on tangents about women and their place in society, and how they're weaker than men and they don't have the same skills. And you're like, what's going on?
And when he starts sleeping with literally everybody.
Well, all of them.
Yeah.
But also, NXIVM has fascinated us among the cults for many reasons. But one is similar to Rajneeshpuram. At first, you hear the things that they're talking about, and you're like, yeah, man, sign me up. This sounds like it's about self-empowerment and releasing fear and owning up. And it's also really reflective of theater school. We both went to theater school, and some of the literally things they were doing and talking about, you're like, I've done that, or I've had my version of that conversation. So it's familiar in a really scary way. But I think the thing that really struck the both of us is how many powerful, highly intelligent, successful women get sucked into that group. And it kind of bucked one's expectations of who gets sucked into a cult.
Yeah.
I feel like that really sets NXIVM apart.
Well, because you look at Heaven's Gate and it does seem like a lot of societal outcasts.
Correct.
And then you look at NXIVM and it's these people who have fortunes and are successful businesswomen and actresses with successful resumes, tight-knit families that are happy in their lives, and then their entire family dynamic gets pulled apart.
Yeah, who I believe the one young lady, like her own family kind of sold her down the river for
Daniela.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were like, just go stay with Keith. And then she ended up in a room for 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that's the thing with cults, especially that cult. Successful people not only joined but sought out that cult
And funded it.
And funded it.
It could not have happened. That's the other thing about cults too, right? It couldn't have happened just with Keith Raniere.
Oh no, and I think that's
it takes these other folks to build out the society.
I think that's the other sad part about it too. When you see his ring of who he put in place to build and enforce the rules of that sex cult. It's like not only is it women, but he's using, other women are helping victimize other
Correct.
women
Yes.
for the sake of this one guy.
So I feel like now we are getting into it. So yeah, our next film that we're working on is Clifton Park, and it is was we'd been wanting to explore the idea of cults and Nexium in particular, but we weren't sure how to get into it. But we found the most fascinating person to us was Allison Mack, who was Keith's right-hand person in not Jeunesse, but
DOS.
in DOS, that female empowerment group. But something about Allison is just like what you were saying, this idea of like, was she a victim or was she a perpetrator? Can you be a victim and a perpetrator at the same time? How does one become a victim and a perpetrator? Did she cease being a victim when she was a perpetrator?
Yeah.
Just that
Yeah.
really gray area that they got in, and really wanting to kind of pick that apart. And I don't know, I feel like whenever we're working on a project, I'm always trying to find myself in a person. So
Okay.
like, where do I see myself in Keith? Where do I see myself in Allison? And that started leading us starting on this project.
Well, I think going back to like your question about that perpetrator victim, I think absolutely. I mean, I think you look at the systems and programs we have in place. We have so many programs that like their design is to literally destroy and break down who you were, and then remake into what this person wants you to be. I mean, take
Right.
the military.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're
Don't
you're-
question.
You literally. Oh, for the military, torture might be the wrong word, but I mean, you're deprived of sleep. You're deprived of this. You're
Yeah.
literally broken
Yeah.
down that way. All right,
You're
man.
pliable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're broken down to this workable wad of clay that now they can remake into something else.
But you
And
know
I
what's
think that's
interesting?
exactly what he did. to people.
You're talking about the military, but I'm hearing it as our theater school. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's
Well,
the
just
same
like-
thing.
it's the
You
same
break
thing.
you down so that you could be molded, and rarely would you be comparing like theater kids and soldiers and
it's
cult
the-
members. But isn't that interesting
the
that it
same-
really
But there's
is?
this
principle.
idea in theater school where you almost have to like, you're 18 and you're supposed to emotionally kind of torture yourself publicly
Mhm.
in order to prove or show that you're capable of deep emotion and therefore can be cast in the big roles that everyone wants on the
Yeah.
main stage.
It's almost
you
like
know?
a trauma contest.
It
Who
is.
can have the biggest public trauma? Who can dig the deepest? And this is what we really dig into in our film, like just this idea of commitment, right? At least in our community, in the theater, in the entertainment community, I feel like the metaphorical electric fence is, oh, what, are you not committed? Oh, you don't want to do that thing? Oh, is that person more committed than you
Yeah.
are?
Right.
And then you, as your bushy-eyed, bushy-tailed and bright-eyed young actor, you're like, no, I'm committed. I'll do
do
that
it.
thing that other person won't do.
I can totally see that and hear that, even not even being in film school. I mean, Eddie's kind of told me some stuff too. I mean, I remember Eddie being in theater like very young, trying to get roles. You know, he was Christopher Robin and Peter Pan, Christopher Robin and Winnie the
Winnie the
Pooh. That
Pooh.
was
Yeah.
the first like big role I remember him getting. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like you gotta, and it's exactly the same principle. It's like we gotta strip you down
Yeah.
and take away everything to be this person that we want you to be. And Keith was superb at doing that, and I think that's what he did to that girl. Yeah,
Well, and Keith was an expert, so there were so many elements, especially with the women. Like, it's really obvious when you watch things like The Vow or you do research on Nexium, how he was manipulating the women around him. But everyone, he had them up at 2 or 3 a.m. playing volleyball in the
Yeah.
middle of the night. And it's because, like, he can't sleep. You know, he doesn't sleep. He needs attention. And so he's going to deprive everyone else of sleep, convince them all that you don't really need sleep. Sleep is like a weakness.
Mhm.
And convince these women who were already tiny, skinny women that they needed to lose weight and that would make them
Yeah.
feel better. And now you've got this systemic eating disorder, you know, domino chain that's happening with this whole master slave complex with all these
Yeah.
women. And so he just was truly an expert at, all of those things, eliminating sleep, eliminating nutrition and a well-balanced meal, and being fueled cutting off people's family.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that too. Cutting you off from the people who could probably talk you out of it.
Yeah. So one of his women was like his first kind of number one. Her name was Pam, and she ended up getting cancer and passing away before Nexium, before he was indicted. But I have a personal connection through a family member who was roommates with her in college, and yeah, she just as soon as she joined, there was like no communication with her family. She was entirely cut off from them, and that is what Heaven's Gate did. That's what all these cults did, is convinced you, everything you need is right here, and you should get rid of all these distractions. These things are just going to distract you from your purpose.
First stage of possession is isolation.
Yeah.
Well, and this is an element to our latest project that we haven't talked about yet, but maybe I can thread the needle here. Is so in 2012, I co-founded a theater company in New York City called
The Representatives. Yes.
Where we wrote and performed original plays in people's apartments, and admission was a bottle of wine. And we'd all drink the wine at a party afterwards and talk about the show. And we kind of became a bit of an underground theater sensation. Maren and I met in that. And while I would not say, you see where I'm going with this, while I would not say the Representatives were a cult per se, looking back, I was one of two unquestioned leaders in this group, with this die-hard following. And my experience in that group really gives me empathy for cult members, because my artistic partner and I at the time really did feel like we were changing the world.
And you were doing beautiful work.
Yeah, we really did feel like, and so a lot of times those ends would justify means that I look back and, while we never got anywhere near the literal horrors that were committed in Nexium, there were absolute abuses of power. Looking back, there were absolutely kind of romantic entanglements that you look back and go, oh, that was kind of a weird way that started, or would that have happened if I wasn't in that position of power? And so we, and Maren also was instrumental in the end of that theater company in a good way. In a good
I had
way.
integrity.
In a good way.
And the theater company fell apart.
But so we had been wanting to, similarly, we'd been wanting to explore cults. We'd written a couple of different projects about cults, but we'd wanted to explore Nexium for a while, and we also wanted to process our individual and mutual experience with the Representatives. And so slowly but surely these ideas started to form together, and we came up with this idea for this film called Clifton Park, which is about this experimental theater company in New York called the Ambassadors, who is working on a play about Nexium. So they travel upstate for the weekend to hold a method acting retreat where they're going to stay in character for the entire weekend.
Okay.
Obviously, things go horribly awry, and someone ends up dead. And the main character is this college student named Mari, who the Ambassadors are her theater idols. And she has been awarded a spot in this method acting retreat.
Okay.
So the film is about this young woman escaping the cult of this theater company.
This sounds amazing. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
No bullshit. It sounds, that's a great idea. It's a very original idea.
Yeah.
I think that's, I can't, so do you have any, can you tell us when you might think it could be out or anything like that?
Yeah, so we're filming in the fall, like October, November. We're in pre-production right now, doing things like locking in location, securing funding, locking down our cast.
We just locked in our location, so it's all going to take place in one location, and we just locked it down, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, big props to Eddie's wife, B, for that.
Yes.
So
We love B.
Oh, yeah, all the love to B and Eddie. But yeah, so we would film it in the fall, which means we're probably looking at like a late spring turnaround time of the actual film. Then we start to put it through film festivals, which is like a 1 to 2 year long process before it's usually given a home where it sits and it lives and people can go to watch it.
And that's like what, like you, I guess what, find like distribution, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yep. Yeah, find distribution or find like a site that will host it. And a lot of those will do like revenue shares with the creators. So stuff like that.
So
But
we're super stoked. We're at the beginning of a very long process. We have our script. It's actually at a few different screenplay competitions. What did we just do?
we just were a quarterfinalist with Blue Cat screenplay competition, and we were a quarterfinalist with the Screencraft Film Fund.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of momentum behind this idea, and I think what really excites us is, again, we've been wanting to write about cults and about NXIVM, but there's actually like so many wonderful projects right now about NXIVM that we're like, honestly, what are we going to add to this? And it took us a while to find what is an authentic angle from which we can speak to this, and being able to speak about how do I recognize this behavior in myself? How do I recognize this behavior in my own community? In terms of abuse of power, sexual assault, and just the kind of, I don't know, underhanded goings on in the theater community, film community, theater school community. This gives us an opportunity to talk about that in kind of a horror film-esque kind of way, because these women in real life, we're living through a real life horror film.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great idea, and I think like even when you go and watch like shows like The Vow and stuff like that, I don't feel, as a viewer, they touch more, or they don't touch enough on the actual people that fall victim to these cults. I mean, yeah, they go over them, but you don't really get like a sense of their depth.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most terrifying thing about cults, is like these people, like the whole stereotype of very smart, successful people falling victim to this. And I think that's a great idea you guys are doing in a horror form. I think it's very fresh for the horror genre. And I can't really wait to see it, because horror needs something new and fresh.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. Like, I'm a sucker for a cerebral horror film like Ari Aster. That's why we're talking about Midsommar. Babadook's another one. I like It Follows. Some people don't like It Follows.
I mean, Get Out's a super.
It Follows is fantastic.
It Follows,
so good.
Yeah.
But you have to wait like a year or more before the next one comes out, and then we watched, was it Smile?
Yeah,
that one was
Smile.
good too.
See, I still have to watch that.
Yeah, we liked it. Maybe a little not so memorable, because I honestly can't really remember what happened. I think you fell asleep.
I probably did.
But
no offense to Smile.
No, it was a great
I'm just
film.
a rather tired person.
But yeah, it feels like you have to wait so long for that really like thoughtful, nuanced, cerebral horror film to come out, and so it's like we want more of that. We want to be making this.
Well, and I was thinking on the right over here too, like why is the horror genre so popular? You know what I mean? Like why has it lasted so long? And at least my humble interpretation is, I think we as a society make horror films about things that haunt us as a society.
Yeah.
Or things that haunt us as individuals. And I could say, and you know this, so we write together. Often I'm the first kind of generator, and Maren comes in and makes it better. But because I'm the generator, I have to kind of think of, like, what's this idea I want to explore? And often I'm exploring a feeling or an experience that I have not fully processed and that I'm really uncomfortable with.
Absolutely.
So our film, Keeper, is about these two adult orphan brothers. One of them has a traumatic brain injury and the other one has to become his caretaker. And when my father passed away in 2018, I wasn't sure if I was going to become my younger brother, who has schizoaffective disorder, his caretaker. And so that was my way to kind of process those difficult feelings. And again, we had a lot of these icky, weird, confusing feelings about our time in the representatives. And just this gives us a chance to kind of explore that. But also, we recently kind of came up with this idea that Clifton Park is actually a film about gaslighting. It's a film about gaslighting and a film about resilience. And I think right now, whether you're talking about the Me Too movement, whether you're talking about Trump and his followers, this idea of gaslighting, this idea that facts don't matter anymore. Mm-hmm. What is a bigger horror film than the idea that we can't agree on facts anymore? That is terrifying. Yeah. Like, it's like we're all living in the upside down. Mm-hmm. And so we always like to have kind of an answer to the why now. Why are we, we could want to create this film, but honestly, we need audience members. Like, we don't exist without audience members. So why now is because I feel like we're living through this communal horror film where we're all being gaslit every day. And so we wanted to create a film that gives us a space as viewers, as individuals, to process what is it like to be powerless in this world? What is it like to be powerful in this world where we're constantly being gaslit?
You know, a term I hear, this is very scary, and this kind of plays into what we're talking about. A term I hear a lot nowadays is like another civil war. There's going to be a civil war. Oh, civil war, blah, blah. And I'm kind of thinking it's like, I don't really think the people saying that term really know or picture what a 2023 or God forbid, you know, a modern day civil war, what it's going to look like. It's not going to be, well, this half of the country is going to fight this half of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not North and South.
Yeah, and they're going to wear blue, so you know who they
exactly.
are, and they're going to wear gray, so you know who they are. No, it's not. It's more just like you said, these tribal pockets of people who have this idea and do not want to risk destroying that framework by debating you. They'd rather just get rid of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's more or less like what you're talking about. Like, yeah, this group versus this group versus this group all in this one place.
Yeah.
And it's going to be chaos.
Right.
And that's really
well, and it already
scary.
is.
It already is. It already, like, and if you get, like you said, if you go on social media, you can already see that.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen when that really plays out into the street?
So it's like, what is the horror film you make for a society that is living through a horror film?
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, that's
Kind of
true.
where we were,
I definitely
where
think
we
you're
were
on the right
thinking.
track. I mean,
Yeah.
that, and you know, a lot of these horror, I mean, Ari Aster making movies about like about loss, anxiety,
Grief.
That's a big grief.
Yeah.
That's a huge fear that a lot of people. That's everyday life.
my
Well, because
gosh.
everyone goes through it in their life
Everyone
at
goes
some
through
point, you know.
One of the first films that we watched when we started dating was The Witch.
Oh, I
Oh,
love
that
The Witch.
movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie. I was talking
Terrifying.
about
Black fella.
Black Ballad. That was one of our first couple inside jokes.
that.
It was.
Want to live deliciously. Yes, please.
That was one of our first, and then our first date was
Parasite.
which, I don't know, has horror elements to it
It's got
as
horror,
well.
yeah,
little
yeah.
elements.
A horror element, and that's another thing too, like class.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Class to me, class fits in with cults.
Yeah.
You have enough high class, they think they're this group better than this other group,
Yeah.
Well, and they're running the world.
and they're running the world.
Makes
Currently.
me think of Squid Games.
Yes.
Like,
You know, I still
high
haven't watched
class.
Squid Game. I
Oh,
want to.
Highly recommend.
do it.
Yeah.
Pull the trigger.
Yeah,
it's
it's
okay.
worth
good.
it. It's worth it.
There's a movie. I don't know if you two have seen it. It's one of my favorite cult movies. It's called The Invitation. I think it came out in 2016 or 2017.
Eddie was telling us about
I
this,
don't
but we
think I
haven't.
have.
I don't think I've seen it.
We'll happily take cult movie and/or horror movie recommendations.
Well,
yeah.
check that movie out. It's like I said, it's a guy. I won't give too much away, but a guy who he's got a new girlfriend. He's got a new life. He had a real tough breakup. Kind of, set him down a beaten path. He meets this new girl. Things are looking pretty good, and he gets this dinner invitation to go over and have dinner with his ex and her new life. And it's like, he's kind of going just to kind of tell himself like, hey, this is a sign I
put this behind me.
And
Closure.
Closure. And you can tell he even doesn't really want to do it. Like his new girlfriend's kind of like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
You need to get past it. You need to kind of bury the hatchet. He's just kind of like, he still doesn't really want to let go a little bit. He's nervous about it. But they go to this dinner invitation. Very good movie. Slow burn.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I can't
think it was
believe I
on
haven't
Netflix
seen
for
that.
the longest time.
Yeah.
I wish I knew the name of the guy who was the main star in it, but he's been in a lot. He shows up in a lot of stuff. He was the boyfriend in Prometheus. You can see his face.
Yeah. I don't have
He
his
always
name,
shows-
but
Yeah, he always shows up. What do you think is the best cult movie thus far?
cult movie.
Tie it back to cults.
Oh,
Let me see.
I always fail at these. What is the best? What is your favorite? I fail at these questions.
Well, give me some. Like, why can't I come up with cult movies?
Okay, I'm gonna throw mine out there, and I think maybe we all might agree on it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out the Wicker Man.
Oh
Original
well,
Wicker
yes,
Man.
Yes.
sure, yeah.
Not the brilliant remake with Nick Cage.
Yeah.
We're kidding. We're kidding.
Who's it in that original one? Christopher Lee?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Sir
right.
Christopher
That's
Lee.
right, Sir
Yeah.
Christopher Lee. Yeah, man.
I think to me that's the
The OG.
the OG, the OG Wicker Man. I think it's the best.
See, it's hard for me because again, we consume a lot of documentary content as well, which we always joke because we're narrative filmmakers, but we consume like 90% documentary content, and I just keep on going back to this idea of watching documentaries or docuseries on cults makes me feel like I'm watching a horror film. Makes me feel like I'm watching a modern day or real life horror. So I sooner talk about Wild Wild Country or Holy Hell or The Family.
Oh, The Family
is a great cult docu series, which I would consider all these horror films as well, or obviously The Vow.
Mine's obvious, but Midsommar. I love Midsommar. I just love Ari Aster as a filmmaker. I think he does brilliant work.
The acting in it is...
Florence Pugh is the best actress. She just deserves such a shout out. I'm just holding space for her right now.
And she's like living through like a very well deserved reign right now.
Yeah. And you know what? She's I feel like she hasn't even really been doing it too long. She kind of
came up in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Like Midsommar, I was like,
who's this?
There are those actors who I've always envied who feel like they can push a button and just all of this emotion. Whereas for me, that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of work, and we still don't know if it's going to come at the end.
Yeah. Well, I
but
think
she's just so magical.
Just her, like you said, her range, and I think she's in the new Dune movie coming out.
Oh yeah,
Can't wait to see that. That's kind of off the topic for her, sci-fi, but I can't wait to see what she brings to that movie. The first half was really good. And yeah, you know what? So she's actually in another horror movie called I think it's Malevolent. And I think I saw Malevolent first.
I think I've seen that.
But I didn't put two and two together because she looks different.
Yeah, she looks different in everything that she's in.
So, but yeah, I hope she kind of doesn't say goodbye to the horror genre like a lot of actresses do. They start out in hard and then they go. I hope she kind of comes back.
And they level up.
Even Don't Worry, Darling had a bit of a horror.
Oh yeah,
thriller element. Yeah,
thriller element.
Or an occult element.
Yeah, it's actually. I would say that's a cult film as well.
Yeah.
Going back to kind of back to what we're talking about. I feel like men are in kind of like there's a lot of men groups out there that are like really, Andrew Tate, great example, sucking these young men in who are very, disenfranchised from society. They're not doing well with education and stuff like that. They're perfect victims for these guys to like capitalize on. I saw a lot of that in Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
Like a big underlying tone in that film.
Well, also because as a man. But as a progressive male, the society is going in the direction that I think is wonderful, that folks who have been voiceless historically are being raised up, whether it's folks of color or women, trans folk. But I have empathy for the folks who were in power. It must be, change is hard. Yeah. Change is hard. And this goes back to the idea of people being susceptible when people are vulnerable and someone comes up to them and says, you're actually not the problem.
Yeah.
Well, those people are the problem. That's where that scary stuff happens and where you can get sucked in because it's hard. Change is hard. Empathy.
I absolutely agree, and I think you're talking about what do you make a scary movie about today. I think one of the things is like that cult that's kind of waiting in the wings because all the elements that just make that something are there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you have this whole group of displaced young men who either are or really aren't and think they are. And you're right. Here's the right person telling them, hey, you're not the issue. It's all this going around. Like, I do think there is a truth to that, but I think it's because today roles have changed so much in the last like 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't understand what the new roles are
Right.
for this group. Like, the role of a man back in the day was, okay, you're the sole provider.
Right.
You're the sole this, you're that. Da, 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 da. Well, obviously that's changed. And it's changed for all the right reasons.
Right.
Women are very successful. Minorities and people of color are very successful.
Yeah.
They're making real money now. They're doing real things. They don't have to, you be successful at your career while I don't.
Right.
It's changed. But there's old stigmas of the old roles still like apply, and they're still there. And it's like, well, we're not meeting that expectation now,
Yeah.
even though it's there. So I do think there's an element of that. And that's why you have this group. It's like, okay, we're kind of lost.
Yeah.
And they're going to get the wrong leader. They already kind of saw that.
We have trouble with ambiguity in our society. We have we're not taught how to say I'm sorry, so we just avoid being wrong all the time. And so that's well, I do have a little bit of empathy for guys who are going through that. I think what I have more of is a hope that folks can hold more ambiguity in their life. Folks can learn to be a bit more uncomfortable. I mean, we even got in a little argument on the way over here. I can't even remember about what, but I remember saying in the car, oh, that's right. I need to learn as someone who, straight, white, cisgendered male, that it's okay for me to accept someone's truth before I understand it. It's okay. Even though society is structured, so someone who looks and sounds like me, I get to choose. No, I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to accept this until I understand it. I think maybe that's a more articulate version of what I tried to say 30 seconds ago. Even though I have empathy for these men who are going through this big power shift, my bigger hope is that we, because I'm a man as well, learn to listen to other people's truths and accept those truths even before we understand those truths.
I agree with a level of that. I think, at least I see it with America. I think American politics and people who follow politics, who choose leaders and stuff like that, like we can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
We can't hold two ideas at the same time. Like you can.
Yeah.
That's true.
You can be on the side of women and men without. You know what I mean? It's like
without ostracizing one of the groups.
Right,
It's not
exactly.
a zero-sum game. Correct.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
yes,
can be
agreed.
like, hey, well, if I support men, I have to completely cut off my support. For women.
Right.
Agreed. Yes.
And the other way, it's like you.
But that's that lack of ability to deal with ambiguity.
Yes.
Like it's either this or that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think we're always looking for that one trick solution. Like we've got, and not we. Like I'm talking more about like the leaders we choose.
Right.
Like, they've gotten so lazy with. It's either like guns, for example. Like I don't know what to do about guns.
Right.
I don't really think anyone does know what to do about guns. But it's either guns or no guns.
Yeah.
It's got to be one or the other. And it's like, it's a little bit more complicated than
Right.
It's definitely complicated, and I mean, I do think we can get rid of weapons of war. I think that is one step.
I think we
step.
do too.
But
Again,
I empathize with the desire or the need to protect. I understand that. Disagree with maybe the means with which to do that.
Yeah.
But
you definitely. We need hammers, but you don't.
And films.
And films.
We need hammers, but you don't need a sledgehammer to drive
There you go.
drive a nail through drywall.
Yeah. Right.
There you go.
It's a little too powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like if you disagree with that, well, you just hate hammers. You want to take them all away. No.
I just think you're putting a hole in the drywall instead of putting the nail in the wall.
Exactly. Right. And it's like that's the way we are. It's like you can't. Well, you just hate hammers, and you hate people who have hammers. It's like that's not. No.
But because we are, which our film is about, in this kind of post-truth era where we can't agree on facts, there's always someone who's going to tell you what you want to hear or what makes you feel better. So there's always going to be someone in the back corners of social media saying like, yes, like, no, you should have the ultimate power and everyone else is disenfranchising you, and we need to like level the playing field so that you can be comfortable in your life again. You're always going to find that. So that is the real horror we're living in right now.
Yeah, there's always a war on somebody or something. There's always a war. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's a war on progressives, or it's a war on this and that. It's like, and it's like we're just, George Carlin said it. The older I get, the more George Carlin becomes a prophet. Not
Yeah.
And he'd be like, we're like people. It's always war on something. War on homelessness. Like, how's it gonna be a war?
Yeah. Do we have to have a war about it?
Yeah.
Just put some structures in place.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, really.
But you read my mind about that this all being connected to if we can't agree on facts, of course we're all always at each other's throats. Like that's like the thing that we could agree on. But of course, like if we don't have that, there's going to be this like neo-tribalistic, uber-tribalistic society that's always at each other's throats.
Exactly, and there's just going to be no balance of harmony ever. Yeah. And it's like you need to work with people to get things done, and that's why it feels like nothing is getting done, at least at like a high level.
Yeah,
you know,
it does make me concerned. But I have a half a fear that one day the purge might actually be a real thing. Everyone will decide, you know what, the way that we handle this is we have 12 hours or 24 hours a year where everyone gets to do whatever they want. I'm like,
great job bringing it back to horror.
Yeah,
nice callback.
I think you're absolutely right, and I was saying that. I was thinking that like a couple years ago. I'm like, man, watch, it's gonna be the purge,
right?
I would rather us just become a little bit more okay with being wrong.
I would rather that as well than the purge. I'm not saying the purge is the right way to go. I'm just saying, like, people are so unreasonable now that seems like unreasonable people could think they're making a reasonable decision somewhere down the line by instituting a purge.
That, and I think people have just gotten, like, people in general, like society in general, has just gotten like so lazy.
Yeah.
They would actually be like, well, that's a lot easier.
Yeah, it'd be easy to just set one day a year. Yeah. All your semi-automatics can come out and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, we can't build affordable housing here in San Francisco. What do we do?
Yeah, the purge.
Well, I saw this movie.
And it seemed to work for them.
And they'll bring their own supplies. It'd be totally, cost the city nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very horrible. I've only seen the first purge. I've never seen the other purges. I'm more of a ghost.
I've seen some of the.
I've seen one of them. I can't remember which one.
Purge Election Day.
I think maybe that is the one. I've
seen that one. But yeah, and I mean that's what we're new creators in the horror thriller genre. Our work previously has not been in the genre, but we're so excited to approach it because we have been like uber consumers of, whether it's documentary or more narrative, horror and thriller films. Like it's such an exciting way to reflect the society we live in with these kinds of narratives, and Jordan Peele's doing that right now.
Oh my gosh, he's a master at that.
Yeah. And so we're really excited to bring our ability to translate our experience as individuals in society to a compelling, tension-filled narrative that makes people really think about, the real horrors that we're experiencing and living in.
The real life horrors, and while we're certainly not arrogant enough to think that this film is going to solve all societal ills. My answer, you're at film festivals and they always say, what do you want people to get out of this film? And whether we're creating a LGBTQ rom-com, which we just did, or a family drama, which we've done, or now a horror psychological thriller, I always want people to know that they're not alone. And I think really good art does that. And I think when we feel like we're alone, then we have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Then we get into these tribalistic mentalities, this poverty mentality of it's a zero-sum game, and when you win, I lose. But I feel like the more we remember we're not alone, the more we remember we're more similar than we are different, the harder it is to dehumanize each other. And ideally, that will help us get back on a more, I don't know, communal path.
I couldn't agree more, and I think being a horror fan for so long, and like going to festivals and talking to people about horror, like you realize it's a very close knit community. Horror fans are, so that's really great. You guys are both are contributing more to the horror genre.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exciting and intimidating because horror fans are the most
Yes!
hardcore.
They will
Are
let
the
you
most
know it.
hardcore.
They
So
will let you know it. But you know what, too? Like even horror fans, at least from my experience, like they're willing to give. I mean, independent filmmakers making horror movies, I think, get the best. Hey, we're going to give your movie a chance.
Yeah.
Like, give it the time of
Agreed,
day. Like
agreed.
the fans are like, you know what, you did so much to make this. We're going to give it a shot. At least watch it.
Horror film fans want something fresh,
They do,
whereas
they
a lot
really
of the
do.
main media right now wants another Marvel film, wants another recreation of Full House or
well,
Golden
I would
Girls.
actually argue. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
I would argue in comparison to like sci-fi and fantasy fans, I feel like often sci-fi and fantasy fans don't want things to change. There's a lot of pushback when a new version of something. Whereas I do feel the horror crowd, in comparison, is hungry for what's the latest version of this.
What's the
do.
next
They
take?
Very
do.
open and hungry and passionate about pushing the form forward.
And new
They
voices, too.
Yeah.
New voices, like you said, new voices, new content, and nothing. Horror. I mean, obviously you got your slashers, you got your iconic stuff, but like the two of you are trying to do, nothing's more terrifying than holding that looking glass up to that world you're living.
Yeah.
Like holding that looking glass up and be like, oh wow, because that's nothing's. You don't see the big picture when you're up close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you get a chance to zoom out with these films. It's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
this is fucked up.
Right.
It's terrifying.
Well, and we're doing it to ourselves, where were
Absolutely.
we complicit in the theater company, or where were we contributing to unhelpful power dynamics? And so it's our way of processing too.
Well, and this is this line still in there? I don't know. We've gone through a series of cuts, so sometimes I can't remember what lines ended up in our film. But at one point there was a line where my character, who's the director, says, if we play our cards right this weekend, then the audience will recognize themselves in every character in our play. And that's a little bit of a secret goal in this film, too, that as you're watching it, you're maybe recognizing yourself as perpetrator and victim at different points in your life. You're like, oh, at one point I was like the character of Mari, who is this, in our film, this young, eager college student, or, oh, I am like Sam, this manipulative director, or maybe I'm like Claire, who's this person in the middle who's just trying to keep the peace, and then all of a sudden finds herself doing or saying things that maybe she wouldn't have otherwise done. So I feel like if we do our job correctly, folks are watching the film and being like, oh gosh, that kind of reminds me of that one time. Now I'm looking back on that experience a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I really can't wait. I hope this. This film sounds like
so good.
really good.
Yeah.
As soon as they enter the house, the tension just
Because I am that horror fan.
Yeah.
I am looking for something more. I am chasing that dragon.
Yeah.
So to speak. I couldn't tell you to let. I mean, Midsommar was creepy. That was 2019. I'm trying to think of the last.
kind of like blow your mind horror
Blow
film.
your mind, scare the shit out of
Yeah.
you. And I think before Midsommar, I mean, Hereditary was really scary. I think that was 2016, 2018 maybe. But I think the movie before that was probably Sinister. I don't know if you've ever seen Sinister.
Sinister. Yeah.
They say scientifically that's the scariest movie ever made.
Wow.
I wonder how they measure that.
I guess they
Like
did.
the amount
it was
of jump scares, or
yeah, pretty much. So they did they measured
Or like heart rate.
heart rate
doing
like so much. Hey, out of this pool of people who watch these movies, we tested their heart rate. Their heart rate stayed heightened for this amount of time on average with
Wow.
this film, and they deemed it scientifically sinister. It's the scariest movie ever made.
Wow.
From their experiment.
Yeah.
I'll have to find the link. There's a thing
I know, I
read
wanna
a couple years ago.
check that out.
That
cool.
made me think of something that I'm particularly excited about in Clifton Park is, so Maren directs, we write them together. Maren directs all of our films, and I have some sort of acting role in them. But something that I think you are particularly good at in all of our films, no matter what genre, is this building of this tension. And it just starts really small, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm talking about, that happens in the rom-com we created too. That happens in the family drama. That will happen times a bazillion in Clifton Park. And I just can't wait to see how you play with your palette of film colors in order to create this tension that, again, if we play our cards right, is happening from the beginning of the film.
And your heart rate is just
like,
slowly increasing until
you're
the
screaming,
end.
and you're like, get out of there, get out of there.
See, that's
she's good at that. You're really good at that.
Yeah, that's what we're craving. That's what horror fans are craving. Like, okay. I mean, we'll watch the new Scream movie, and I'm actually really excited for the new Evil Dead movie.
Oh yeah.
We're horror fans, but we want substance.
You want substance, yeah.
We want substance. We crave it.
Yeah.
Give it to
We
us.
want to go on an actual journey.
We'll take any scare, but the substance is gratifying.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, we'll eat the McDonald's, but we want the nice filet mignon.
I was just gonna say,
with the side of the scampi.
Well, the things that you can unpack psychologically and emotionally for hours after you watch it. It's like a meal. It is. You're chewing on it, and you're finding tastes and elements about it even after you've watched it 5 or 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, I think if we do it the way we want to do it, I think Clifton Park will be a filet mignon with a side of McDonald's fries.
Yeah.
Because you gotta have those fries.
You gotta have some of the fries.
Well, they do have the best fries.
They do. It's true.
I'm not gonna lie.
They're literally addicting.
Is I believe it's is it One Eyed Rabbit production company?
Yeah.
Is that going to be affiliated with this project?
Oh yeah. One Eyed Rabbit is
Okay.
the company that we do all of our work through. What is it? one-eyederabbit.com?
Yeah.
Is that our website?
ONE-EYEDRABBIT.com.
Yeah, updates are always on the website. One Eyed Rabbit is our company. It's our little baby, and it's how we birth all of our projects. So.
Well, and that's why we've been just slowly approaching our first horror film. Clifton Park's more of a thriller, but in that genre. And our logo is this kind of like tattered. Is tattered a word?
Yeah.
Rabbit. And he's like, messed up. And he's this one eye is cut out, and the other eye is like a little red dot, like a camera recording light. And we call him Benny the Bunny. But it looks like a horror production company logo. And we've been making these like family dramas. And so now we're like, so our logo's going to fit finally.
We're finally going to make sense of our logo. Yeah, you're absolutely right. People always ask, like, do you do horror? We're like, not yet. Very well.
We're on our way there. Wait, have you seen, because if you haven't, you have to watch it, Hush? It's on Netflix? Yes.
Oh,
okay, good.
That's, okay. That's one of my, I love him so much, but I can't think of his name.
Mike Flanagan.
Oh,
I love Mike
We
Flanagan.
love Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan, and you're a big
Haunting of Hill House. I love the first season.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that was a great book, too. I love that, and he is getting ready to do the Dark Tower series. And I think if anyone's going to do it justice,
he will.
It's going to be that guy. I just hope Amazon lets him
do his thing. Yeah. Right. Because if
So-
you let him fly, he'll just take you on a ride. Oh, I love Mike Flanagan. That's a great movie.
Oh well, you were talking about the The Shining. Did you see Dr. Sleep? Did you watch it?
No.
No, I didn't. No.
Okay, so Dr.
Another
Sleep.
one to add to the list.
Add it to the list. So Dr. Sleep is the sequel to The Shining.
Yeah.
Follows Stephen King's novel of Danny Torrance older. And I mean, obviously the movie is different than the book. I've read the book, watched the movie. He kind of does it very much justice to where he keeps it as much like the book as he can, but it's actually like a sequel to the movie.
Cool.
You know what I mean? He balances it very well, because obviously in the book in the movie they don't burn down the Overlook like they do in the book.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely
All right,
recommend it.
so
Okay,
Doctor
cool.
Sleep will watch.
Doctor Sleep. Not to give too much away, but there's a scene where he does the same camera angles and the same
Nice.
music.
Oh, cool.
So he's stealing from Kubrick, but he's stealing from the best.
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
He does the whole like
So
camera
it's
angle going
real
in.
homage, yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
That's awesome.
definitely watch it. You two will love it, I think.
Amazing.
And Flanagan.
Yeah.
The one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Hush is a great movie, though.
So good.
Yeah.
Very creative.
Did you watch Midnight Mass?
Yes.
You did watch Midnight Mass, yeah.
Also very good.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm still...
we liked
Hill House
that.
season 1 is like... I could talk about for
I
hours.
feel like
but
Yeah.
loved Hill House, liked Midnight Mass.
yeah.
Yeah. Love them both. But I mean, Hill House. I mean,
That first season is so
And
well
what is it,
done.
episode 7?
Incredible.
Is that the one?
Episode
we've
6.
watched? Oh, 6, excuse me, episode 6. The one take episode.
It's like 5 takes. I think the whole episode ends up being maybe like 11 takes in the end, but
it feels
the bulk
like
of it is like
big
3
one take.
takes. Yeah.
Which also creates
So
tension.
good. So good.
great tension. Yeah. Like not a horror. Well, it is a horror movie, kind of, but not like but 1917, the war movie made it look like one.
Oh, yeah.
Just 2 hours of just
Yeah.
watching
Just
movies
like
like this.
You're
Yeah.
used to
Like,
getting to cut away, so when you don't
Yeah.
get that chance,
yeah.
you have to hold on to that tension.
tension.
Skillful filmmakers.
Absolutely. Which I think you two are, or will be.
Following in the footsteps.
What are you two biggest influences in making your films, as far as directing?
Ooh, that's a good question.
What's my biggest influence? You know, it's funny. I'm going to kind of have a cheater answer. So, Maren's the director, so I'll let you think on the directing influence. But I would say as a writer, co-writer, one of my biggest influences is my former artistic collaborator, Stan Richardson, who was the playwright that
Okay.
I formed the representatives with. I mean, I spent 10 years having him write roles for me, and I didn't realize at the time I was kind of soaking in his writing style, the way he structures things, the way he uses art to metabolize his life in the world. So for me, I'd say that's
Huge influence.
my biggest influence would be Stan. Yeah.
I want to say, like, if Greta Gerwig and Mike Flanagan had a filmmaking baby.
Don't tell Noah Baumbach that.
No, I won't tell Noah. That would be my
That's
directing.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
Nice,
I like that.
very nice.
I like that.
I gotta ask real quick because you made your network debut on the Blacklist,
It's true.
playing Congressman Matt Steiner.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
true.
The Marvel movie. So the Marvel movies have fallen off for me,
Mhm.
but I, growing up being a huge Marvel comics fan,
Yeah.
mostly for the writing and the stories and the
Yeah.
art. But so, did you meet Ultron?
I did
James
not.
Spader?
No, I did. I walked past an empty James Spader seat because the day, when they film TV shows, they're just filming parts of it all at the same time. And so while I was, spoiler alert, while I was being murdered by a sex robot, I think James Spader was filming another scene in a different part of the studio.
I was like the Marvel nerd in me.
Yeah.
But it was nice to at least be in the same series as such a great as James Spader.
James Spader, greatest bad guy in the 80s.
Yeah, legend.
Legend.
How was that experience, like being on like a network? Like,
It was wonderful. Like everybody was incredibly gracious. The stars of the show make the day players like myself feel really nice. The hair and makeup folks were incredible because I had to have a hand mark bruise created around me, and so it's just shows like that are such well-oiled machines. The director, whose name is escaping me right now, was so wonderful. I mean, it was basically a non-speaking part. I was on it, I don't know, cumulatively for 30 seconds, but he was like, all right, so here's what's going on. And really talking to me like I was one of the stars of the show, which just, creates buy-in for everybody on set.
yeah,
It was an intimate scene between me and the actress playing the robot, and so when we actually filmed it, all the crew kind of left the room. So it was a really respectful work environment too. So it was really a ideal situation for a network debut.
Very
Now
cool.
we just hope more and more of those happen.
Bring us more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that will happen.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm very excited for this movie. You guys are making it.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
You'll
Thank
be
you for
in the
letting
loop.
us come on and
Oh,
talk
you
about
Yeah.
Yes. Like I said, please be regulars.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Marvel
We
as well.
love nerding out about horror. We'll have a whole Mike Flanagan episode.
it.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
After we watch Dr.
okay.
No,
Sleep.
that's good.
So
That's good. A Mike Flanagan episode. I like
Yeah.
that.
I haven't done a watch party thing yet. I'm still very new to the podcast.
Yeah.
This whole like world and jumping in. But I would totally be open for
Ooh.
Dr. Sleep watch party.
Yeah, okay.
Or like you said, Beau's Afraid.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
love
all right.
Bring it on.
Done and done.
Cool.
Done and
We're
done.
in.
All right, about wraps it up. Thanks for joining us here at the Marvel of Horror. We'll see you again next time.
Woo.
Find us on YouTube at the Marvel of Horror Podcast. Like, subscribe, leave your comments below.